Hi guys, I'm Jerry and this is my rig rundown. So since my school days, I've been in love with guitars and amps and band sound. And when we were in school, we had a little band of our own with our own equipment. 20 years ago, somebody needed a computer interface to do the recording, and in exchange, he gave me a Japanese Tokai Les Paul guitar. And at first it didn't catch my eye, but it was a gold top. But later on, as I got that guitar, the real love affair began with vintage equipment, Japanese made Les Paul guitars. At the same time, I also found a twin reverb, which was in not a very good condition, and therefore I began to channel my energy towards restoring these old pieces of equipment and also discovering the sound that they can make. My work as a gospel musician has taken me all over the world to countries such as Australia, the US, Canada, Singapore, India. And on these travels I've been able to go to the best stores and see equipment as they are, and even pick up parts and different things to restore these amps. And this has been a long journey, about 20 years. And since then, I have begun to collect and restore different kinds of amps. Amps which have defined the tune of sound for guitars, for guitarists, for bands across the years. So today, I'm here to showcase 5 iconic amps which have been part of my collection for some time. And each amp has a distinct sound and has made its mark in the history of jazz music, rock music, used by bands all over the world. I also have a few guitars which may interest you, so let's get to it. The first amp we have today is the Marshall JCM 800. Now if you've looked at bands playing, rock bands playing, you must have seen the Marshall name splashed over the stage. You must have seen multiple speakers and setups, walls of such speakers. Now, one of the first guitarists who made this famous was Jimi Hendrix. He played a Marshall Plexi. And this particular model is a transition model between what he played, the JTM 45, and the later 800 model. The beautiful thing about this amp is it's only 50 watt, but it is a blast. You cannot open the volume past 2. And this particular model is special because it is a 4-input model as opposed to what you get normally. You get a 2-input model these days. So it's from the 1980s and it is a sought after amp. Next we have here a Vox Ac30 Tv6m. This particular amp has defined British rock sound. If you've seen the band Queen, you would have seen Brian May use this particular amp, because this amp is also from the 1990s. Now as we know, Vox began manufacturing amps in the 1960s, so the amps from the 60s are very sought after and very expensive. This is a midway amp from UK, and they stopped production, and now production happens in China. This particular amp comes with blue Celestion speakers, and we have another one with green Celestion speakers. So each amp has a distinct tone. We have people who want the blue tone, and we have people who want the greenback tone. In this amp you have, it's called TB because of the word top boost, and you have a brilliant sound, a normal sound, and a tremolo sound. Our next beauty is a Fender twin reverb. And if you're from the 70s or from the 60s, you would have seen these amps on stage being used by all the bands. This amp is a tube amp. It uses 4 6L6GC power tubes and about 7 other smaller tubes for the reverb, for the gain, and for the phase. We have 2 types of amps. Talk of twin reverb, you have the black phase and you have the silver phase. The black phase were the original amps when Fender began manufacturing, and the silver phase came out later when Fender was sold to CBS. Now this particular amp is from 1976, and though it has a silver phase, we have done the wiring to be the black phase type. Therefore the master volume does not work, but the individual channels work for this amp. And this has actually been my passion, to restore such amps. Since these amps are from the 70s, most amps in Sri Lanka have been in a deplorable state. Because I travel across the world, I've been able to get the grill cloth, I've been able to get the faceplate, I've been able to get the knobs, the Tolex, the handles, the corners, and this is what I do. I spend my time restoring these amps from scratch. This is my passion. This is the Mesa Boogie, the Rolls Royce of guitar amps. If you've read about the Mesa Boogie history, you must have heard of Mark 1, Mark 2, Mark 3, Mark 4 and Mark 5. The beauty of this amp, of the Mark 5 90-watt combo, is that it encompasses all the tones of the Mark 1, the 2, the 3, the 4, the 5. This particular amp could be the most expensive amp in Sri Lanka because it retails for about $2,700, and this has come directly from the US, from California to Sri Lanka as an export model, and therefore it has 230 voltage and doesn't have to be converted to be used. The inside is very complicated because you have all the components on a tight board, and if you look at the front of it, you have so many options which would take at least 2 weeks or a month to study and to get the best tones out of this amp. For me, it's like a Boeing plane because of the options and the different tones it can offer you as a guitarist. Now for some jazz. This is the Roland Jazz Chorus 120. These amps have been extensively used in Sri Lanka from the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s. This amp is different from the rest of the amps because it is a solid state amp, it's not a tube amp. The difference is, the moment you switch it on, the sound and the tone remains the same throughout your playing time. Whereas valve amps, as you play, after half an hour, the tone begins to get warmer and better and the tone changes. Now these have been used in Sri Lanka from the 60s, the 70s, the 80s. In any band you would look at, use these amps either for their keyboards or for other instruments as well. But I love them for the rhythm backing that they can give your band because of the special chorus and the vibrato that these amps have. If you look at these amps, the silver color here, these are the dust caps. Most often these amps, since they've come from such a long time, their speakers have been rewound, whereas in this case the speakers are original and you can see the aluminium dust cap on the speakers. Well, it's a sound that you will love if you hear it being played. My interest also encompasses vintage guitars, both the Gibson type and the Fender type. This particular guitar is a Bernie Les Paul lawsuit copy from Japan. Often they say these guitars were even made better than the Gibson guitars, and therefore they had a lawsuit against them. And if you look at them, they were made with very special woods and specs, ebony fretboards or mahogany fretboards, and they were all handmade as opposed to nowadays where guitars are made with CNC machines. So this could be a handcrafted, custom-made guitar. If you look at the binding, it's a triple binding, and this tells us that this is a custom-made Bernie guitar by the Fernandez company. And therefore I collect guitars like the Greco, the Tokai, and various other models which have been competing with the Gibson Les Paul guitars. And here we have one of the latest Fender Telecaster professional guitars from the US. I picked up this particular guitar at the Sam Ash showroom in Hollywood, where very famous musicians walk into that place. And this particular guitar has a maple fretboard, if you can see a maple fretboard, and Mystic seafoam body, the color. And in fact, they've stopped production of this model across the world. So this is a sought after and loved look of the Fender Telecaster guitar. If you look at guitars, we have either the Fender sound or the Gibson sound. And this is the country music sought after Fender guitar. Now, enough about all these amps, and you need to hear how they sound, and therefore I have a very special guest, Sudham from Mirage, who will come and demo these amps for you. Enjoy. That's it from me regarding my rig rundown. I enjoyed this time. I hope you enjoyed this time and learned something about valve amps and solid state amps and their restoration, and also about lawsuit guitars. At this point, I must take time to thank 3 people who made this possible. First is Sudham from Mirage, who came and demoed all these amps. Secondly, I thank Anil Balasurya for coming and patiently shooting each of these amps and taking different angles and being patient with me. And thirdly, I thank Shane Joachim of Yamaha showroom for this opportunity to showcase all the equipment I have. If you have any questions about restoring amps, tube amps, feel free to contact me and I will share with you whatever advice I have. Also about guitars. Thank you for your time. God bless you and stay safe.